Hi, Christine, and welcome to It's Time, which is an opportunity to have conversations with really interesting people about how owning our time in the context of work, if we do it well, can really help us focus on meaningful, purposeful work, things that make our hearts sing. And I thought it would be really interesting to capture that conversation in the context of COVID and the lockdown, and just to see what themes are emerging for people, what ways of working that they've brought in no longer serve their purpose and they might leave behind, and what new ways they might bring forward, and observations and insights. And I'm particularly interested in speaking with you, because those people who are listening to us talk now, I'm speaking with Christine Langdon, and she is the co-founder and chief of Good at the Good Registry. And the Good Registry, you chip in if I get this wrong, is a social gifting platform, and so it gives people the opportunity to experience the gift of giving, or the power of giving, which is the way you describe it, donating to charities or organisations of their choice, rather than gifting stuff. And I've had personal experience, as you know, of doing that, and what surprised me was not the fact that people gifted to the charity that I chose, but the response from the charity, and the fact that you fed that back to me. Honestly, it just made my heart sing for a week. It was wonderful. So I've had a personal experience of that. And also, I think it's important for people to know that you have transitioned in your career from a full-time corporate role into what I would describe as kind of like a mixed model way of working. And from looking out and in and knowing a wee bit about you, you've managed to, or you are disciplined enough to take care of your well-being as part of all of that. So as we speak, I'm hoping that that will come through as a theme for people. So maybe we just get started, and the first thing I want to ask you is, if you reflect back on your level 4 time, and as we're all transitioning now into level 3 and hopefully beyond, what has the experience been like for you relative to what it was like before? And if anything, what surprised you about that experience?
Okay, thank you. And thanks for having me on to chat about this, because owning your own time is a topic that is important to me. And in the context of level 4, I've probably found it easier than a lot of other people, because I am quite used to owning my time and being quite focused about choosing what I will do with my time, and wanting a good chunk of that time to be about meaningful, purposeful work. So I was already working from home a reasonable amount, although I was at the Biz Dojo co-working space a couple of days a week, and people would very, very often ask for face-to-face meetings, whether it was at the Biz Dojo or in a cafe or at their workplace. And I would always say yes, if it was a meeting that I felt was good use of my time. I've always been quite disciplined about saying no to meetings if I think it's actually not going to benefit them or going to benefit me, or something that matters to me. So what's been nice for me during the lockdown is setting a new expectation that we can jump on the phone or on a video call and still have a really good quality conversation and get the outcomes that we need without having to go and meet face to face. And there's still definitely a place for face to face meetings, but doing it all at home saves a lot of time, just that extra time to get changed out of my yoga pants. And I haven't been getting dressed up for work for a couple of years, but I'd still get changed out of my yoga pants into jeans at least. And to walk into town, I'm pretty close to town, so most of my meetings I'd walk in, and that, it was a nice part of an incidental exercise in my day, but it's still, an hour by the time I get changed and go into town and come back. So I've welcomed having that extra time and still feeling like I can connect with people on the things that matter.
Yes, you're right. it does take a lot of time, doesn't it? Just getting up, getting organised, getting out the door, and then getting back. What did you do with that time? Or what have you been doing with that time?
Well, actually, what surprised me is I thought that I was going to feel spaciousness in terms of, oh, I've got all of this extra time. And it didn't really feel like that for the first couple of weeks. Like you said, I do a mixed bag of things. I was for a couple of years working full-time on the Good Registry, the social enterprise that I co-founded, which you mentioned. And over the last year, I've been transitioning to reduce the hours that I spend on the Good Registry because that time is pro bono, and to do some paid work, some communications consulting as well. And I guess the communications consulting kind of started to bubble up a little bit more, or just be a little bit more challenging to juggle with working from home. So one client, for example, that I have been doing a day a week for the past 6 months, I was going into their office for a day a week. And now that I'm kind of doing that day a week for them from home, but they'll just send me what they want to send me through the course of the week, and I'll respond through the course of the week. I noticed that the switching between different jobs and different clients and my work on the Good Registry seemed to be sucking up more time than I expected it to. So definitely the trying to juggle, the trying to switch between tasks, which I somehow thought was going to be easier at home, didn't deliver me any extra spare time to start with.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because if neuroscience is fascinating these days because people are talking about it. But actually, I remember when I did an MBA years ago now, the thing that stood out most in my mind is how inefficient multitasking is. And I know what you mean when you're switching between one job and another. It's multitasking in effect, isn't it? And it sucks up time to reset, like get out of the first one and reset into the second one. So it's interesting. Yeah.
And I think when I wasn't working from home, I was better at putting my work into its buckets. So when I was in house with that client for the day, they had my full attention for that day. And then there might be a little bit of interaction through the course of the week, but it was just 5 minutes here and there. And then when I was in at the Biz Dojo, I was working solidly on the Good Registry at that time. And as it all merges together, the downside of the multitasking starts to show up.
So that might be a segue and possibly an answer to the next question, which is if you were going to be, heck, I hope we're not, doing this all over again for the first time, which it wouldn't be, what would you do differently?
I would assign my time in blocks to different clients or different pieces of work, rather than just letting my day flow and jumping between different things. I would be more disciplined around my email. I have noticed that the physical isolation, which I really enjoy. I love having time alone, but I have noticed that it seems to create a little bit of a need to have, to see what's going on in my inbox and that kind of thing a little bit more often. And that's where the job switching comes, when an email comes in and I feel like I should switch to it. So if I was being more structured around, well, I'm still actually just going to look at my inbox a couple of times a day, then it would be easier to stick to the task that I'd set myself for that day.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I assumed that I would have a lot more time too, and for all sorts of reasons didn't, similar to yours. But what I realised is that you have to almost be more organised and more disciplined until you find yourself into some kind of new flow. And I'm not yet. And I thought I was reasonably, organised and disciplined, but it's really had to ramp up, and that's tiring too, isn't it? Bear with me because I'm just checking that I'm going to ask you the right questions. So we've talked a little bit about owning your time, insights, and you've talked about being organised and the impact that switching from tasks have and the need to be disciplined. Is there anything else in terms of what you've learned about owning your time, not just in COVID but beforehand, that you think people could really benefit from hearing and listening to your experiences of, the things that worked well and the things that you've tried and haven't worked so well?
I did want to just pick up on the point that you made before that question around the experience being tiring, because for me, and this does relate to this question, I haven't actually found it tiring. I have found it kind of busier and fuller than I thought it would be, but not tiring. And I think the reason for that is because I do have some disciplines which I have stuck to absolutely, and that's the self-care, which you sort of touched on at the beginning.
Yes. Talk to us a bit more about that.
Yeah, I do get up every day and do 30 minutes of seated meditation first thing, and then some hatha yoga before I start doing any work. Often I'll do a run. I can see you out for your walk before I start working as well. But if the day dictates, I'll do a run or some kind of outdoor exercise later in the day. But that set up for the day of nurturing myself first means that I arrive in the day with a good energy and a good flow, and I don't feel like I get overwhelmed by the work, and even when it's busy I don't find it exhausting. And along with that, because I know that that is a critical part of my day, I try to structure my day around it. Wherever I can, when people are asking for a meeting, whether it's during COVID times or ordinary times, I will say, yeah, I'm available between 10 and 12, because I don't want to say I'm available before 10, because I would rather leave that time free for my day, my setup of my day, which is including my meditation, my yoga, my exercise, and just thinking and things that I need to clean up from yesterday. So it might be things that I feel I was incomplete on the day before, or that I just know I really want to prioritize for that day. I want all of that done before I start doing meetings that kind of set up a new flow for the next day.
And is that, so if you think about your day and your week, how much time do you are you disciplined around setting aside for keeping yourself well and setting yourself up before you get into doing meaningful work?
It would be at least 3 hours a day.
Yeah. And you work about an 8-hour day, so 3 of the 8 is...
Oh, no, so 3 hours is before my 8 hours start.
Okay. Okay.
But actually, you know, I used to definitely do a very, very solid 8-hour to 10-hour or more day. At the moment, I'm doing I think we can really only be seriously productive for about 6 hours a day. So probably when I take out the other stuff that I do, I'm probably only doing usually 6 hours of really productive work a day.
And there's so much, you'll know, there's so much research now that says that's where you max out anyway. Our brains max out, particularly if we're doing lots of thinking. And I don't know whether you've read Cal Newport's Deep Work. I've just finished reading that. It's a really great book. And it just reminded me how in such a distracted world, how difficult it is for us. We have to practice sitting like you do for your meditation, really. Sitting, even for half an hour, and focusing on one thing. And then you might do 45 minutes the next day and an hour. And it's just the way our world has really invaded, hasn't it, our ability or our minds to kind of settle on things. So
and I try, it'll usually be 9 o'clock often before I will switch on my devices by the time I've done my seated meditation and yoga and exercise. And at about 9 o'clock the devices might go on, and then I'll start just clearing the stuff or getting ready for the day.
I spoke to someone just before we went into lockdown, actually, who works in the UK, because I was interested in knowing how their experiences are in the world of work. It differs from ours. She wasn't sure whether her experience was simply because of the organisation that she worked in, but she said there are things around owning time over there that most people kind of agree is almost unstated policy, which is you don't have, to your point, you don't have a meeting until about 9:30, sometimes 10 o'clock in the morning, and that would give people a chance, wouldn't it, to kind of get up, get organised, settle in, do their run or their work or their yoga or whatever, play with their kids, and it ends at 3. So meeting, they're quite disciplined about meetings. So I thought there's some stuff that we can really learn from others, aren't there, that we can take through, which is my next question really, of all of the things that you brought into the way that you work, appreciating that you're more of an expert than most of us probably. What did you bring in that you played around with that you've always done that you might leave behind? Or similarly, if there's anything that happened that was new, we may have already talked about this, but we can reinforce it, that you'll pick up and bring forward once we are out of such restricted ways of working.
So I think what I brought in that was helpful, that absolutely reinforces the importance of carrying it forward, is the setting your own schedule. Not feeling guilty about saying, oh, I'm available after 10 o'clock. I don't generally say to people, I don't do meetings before 10. And I do. If people really need to do a meeting before 10, then I'll agree to it. But normally in terms of talking about my availability,
yes,
I'll just, let people assume that I've got something else on before 10 o'clock because I want to set a schedule for myself for a day that works for me.
Yeah.
And then I won't, if I can at all avoid it, set up back-to-back meetings so that I have some space in between the meetings as well. So setting your own schedule as much as you can without being difficult. And in terms of new things that I would carry forward, I think being more conscious around whether a face-to-face, as in physical,
yes,
meeting is really necessary or not. And I love seeing people face-to-face, and I love giving people a hug, and often, first time I've met someone, I'll give them a hug because the meeting felt good, and I appreciate that all of that is missing from an online, a virtual, video call. And at the same time, for people that I know, and there's just business to be done, it's a client and we're just trying to nut out this plan, and then I can get on and do the things that I need to do. That doesn't need to be a face-to-face meeting, and I would like to continue to set an expectation that that we'll do it online if it can be done online.
Yeah, it is really going to be interesting, isn't it, to see how much of all of that we all do. Because I was the same, actually it's not the same if it's not face-to-face, and the default is, well, if you have to, you'll do it online, but it will be interesting to see how much that flips.
Yeah.
Again, we may have captured it, but I'm going to ask you to pick one. So if we think about transitioning out, all of us as a whole, and workplaces being able to, and these are workplaces where most of us are employed, because you of course are consulting, you're consulting by gifting your time for the good registry, and you're consulting in your communications business, whereas probably a lot of people listening to this will be engaged in an employment situation in a workplace, and I know many workplaces are thinking about how they can use this traumatic for some and challenging for others opportunity, and enjoyment for others opportunity, to reset the way their organisations set people up to do their best work. So in that context, if there was one thing that you think organisations should consider implementing or changing to allow people to do that, would you have one that you'd choose?
I think people do their best work when they're happy. So the starting place would be to understand, for those people who are happy working from home, how can we keep you working from home for at least a couple of days a week? And for those people who want to be in the office, let's bring you in, and how do we get you comfortable with the fact that the person that you're meeting with might have chosen not to be in the office. So you may have come in to do meetings, but you might still be meeting with people online anyway. So looking after people's happiness and well-being, I bring as well as the productivity and the well-being lens, I've got a real sustainability value that I can't kind of help bringing into the answer to a question like this. And I would just really love to see people reducing their domestic and international travel for meetings that could be done online. So I really hope that we'll see businesses supporting and encouraging that. People might have thought that they were enjoying the travel. Certainly when I was working for a corporate, I thought that I enjoyed the travel, and I do enjoy the face-to-face meetings, but there's an extra tiredness at the end of the day. There's a lot of downtime in the day of travelling where you're not doing productive work, and then there's also the environmental impacts of that travel. And I just try to imagine if all New Zealanders after the lockdown chose to work from home just one day a week, that would be 20% fewer cars on the road every day. If everyone worked from home 2 days a week, that's 40% fewer cars. And the benefits for everybody in terms of those who are going into the office and how they're going to feel after an easier commute, the benefits for the planet, the benefits for the people staying at home, add up to something that I think is quite awesome.
Yeah, it's been my experience as well. My daughter's been hounding me to get an e-bike. And I'm finding myself saying, that's it, I'm never going on a bus again. I love our bus drivers, they're fantastic, but I'm not getting on a bus again. I'm going to buy an e-bike. And I thought, now this is interesting, because this is my next question for you. What obstacles might get in the way of people sticking to their commitment to working differently as part of the experience that we've all had, do you think?
I think other people's expectations. I think the risk is that we'll slip back into expecting if there's a meeting in the office, everyone will turn up for it. So we need to be careful around looking at what the opportunity is for those who want to keep working from home, to keep doing that. So expectations, technology, the video tools have been amazing. We have been so lucky that tools like Zoom in particular exist. And at the same time, they're not quite there yet. Like for this sudden need that emerged for them, they've been incredible for a long-term viable way for people to connect. I think and I'm sure that people are working on it, just an improved experience on tools like Zoom, where you can kind of have a bit more of a engaging to and fro without that lag between one person being able to be heard and the next person being able to be heard.
I got an email from one of my colleagues this morning, and I missed this, but there was something on the TV this morning about people's enhanced online meetings. You talked a bit about back-to-back meetings. I think there's been quite a bit of back-to-back meetings of people as people have settled, and they've all been done video meetings mostly, but people are getting really tired of back-to-back video meetings, and the need to mix that up. And someone I interviewed a couple of days ago said he phoned somebody, and it was such a relief for that person to be able to A, take the phone call, and B, talk while gardening. And I thought, well, we'll get there in the end as humans, won't we? We'll kind of work it out, but we do have to be mindful of the obstacles that will get in the way of us doing that, and it's probably more around a commitment and a discipline to thinking more broadly about work in the context of the contribution we can make by not going to work on any transport apart from feet and bikes.
Yeah, and that's such an important point that you made about phone calls, is we've all swung from being face-to-face to being on Zoom and suddenly nobody does a phone
I
call
know.
anymore. And I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about the reasons that Zoom meetings make us more tired. We're not actually designed to be in face-to-face conversation for this length of time and the intensity of eye contact. And yeah, let's go back to it being okay just to pick up the phone and not have to do a video call, and the person on the other end maybe not knowing if you're doing something in the kitchen at the same time as you.
Yeah, or calling them in your pajamas or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting, isn't it? I've noticed mostly, and I've missed it already, the lack of noise. I do live on a thoroughfare anyway, but I had an experience for the very first time of it being deafeningly quiet. It was just like the quiet, yeah. And I think if we all do 1 day a week from home or 2 days a week from home, then the noise, of the birds, and where I live, the sea kind of lapping up against the shores, you can actually hear it and be calmed by it than the roaring of trucks and cars past us all.
Yeah, and this is what we want, is quality of life.
Yeah,
and
we do.
is quality of life, and we'll be just as productive at home knowing that we're happy, and we're in an environment that we like, and we're doing work that matters. We don't need to go into the office and have the stress of that.
Yeah, I'm really going to be interested to see how much of a critical mass of people will make substantial changes to their overall expectations of life, including money. So will we get back on that treadmill of people kind of going after the next thing, the next thing, the next thing? I've been there myself. I'm not there now, but you can get caught up in it. And what life's going to be with our borders closed for a while, and buy local and experience local and see how that all settles. It will be really interesting, won't it? Most people that I've seen, almost all people that I've seen, have really enjoyed that calmness and quiet, and how their life has slowed down. Things still get done, but not in that frenetic pace. Yeah, that would be a discipline for me.
A society that has valued money over time to a large extent, and hopefully, and I've definitely heard it from some of my friends, the experience of being at home for a month has made people realise how little they need, and if dropping to a 4-day week gave them more time and more joy, but it meant a reduction in pay. I think people are a little bit closer to getting their head around that, and hopefully we can grab that while that feeling is there before people get back into the treadmill again.
Yeah, and you and I both have done that, haven't we? Because you've come out of paid employment for quite some time to set up the Good Registry, and as you know, I left a big high-paying job and did nothing for quite some time, and was appalled when I opened my wardrobe to see all of those clothes in there and how long it took before I actually had to even replace anything. And the stuff in my apartment that I actually really didn't need. So we've both experienced, and others will have as well, and not that I ever wanted people to be in lockdown for longer than was necessary, but the longer we were in it, the more experience we had of time with family and all of that kind of stuff. Anyway, I'm going to be rambling on because it's a topic that I just adore. But so I'm going to wrap this up, and I've got one final question for you, which is, in the context of everything we've talked about, what question could I have asked you that I haven't asked that you will then give me the answer to?
I guess it's a question around the link between time and happiness, because I think that's where all of my choices have come from. So I can probably just expand on that rather than you trying to have to interpret what I mean by a question. I think I think that we can get we spend a lot of time working and doing the things that we think that we should do, and being focused on the paycheck at the end of that. And what I've found is that the thing that's the most precious thing in life is time, and our happiness is so dependent on how we use that time. For me, it's about using that time in a way that contributes and that's creative, and all of my decisions come back to, am I using my time in a way that gives me that, because I want to be happy. I don't want to use my time to make money. I want to use my time to make happiness.
And yes, and sometimes it's, the level of dissatisfaction that you have to get to in your current way of living. It's different for different people, isn't it? Some people can live with huge amounts of dissatisfaction and still not take any kind of leap into rebalancing that out into satisfaction and happiness and whatever that means. So, I will be really interested to see how the COVID lockdown experience may have tipped some people into thinking, actually, I can work 4 days a week. I don't need another pair of shoes, the same as the last pair, except a different colour. I'm thinking to myself, do I really need, my hairdresser will be putting her hands across her ears, but do I just go naturally grey? I'll still go and get my head massaged, and because they do take care of your hair sometimes better than you can do it yourself, but do I really have to plough colouring through it when actually I'm naturally going to be grey anyway? So
yeah. And I've had that conversation with lots of friends, and it's kind of like, if not now, when?
Yes. Yeah.
It is. So my hair, when I was working in a corporate job, was cut into a little pixie cut that had to be cut every 6 weeks, and it was needed to be dyed every 6 weeks. And that was one of the things that when I gave up full-time employment and a paycheck, that it was like, no, I'm just not going to do that anymore.
I'm sure that you found that people were still engaging with you and wanting to have coffees and meetings, and they didn't go, oh my God, I can't meet you. Well, I think you mentioned it before, it's about expectations, isn't it, and how we allow other people's expectations to influence the way that we live and work. And so the big take home from me, really, from talking with you, which is not a surprise, so the change that I've been thinking about being a lot more disciplined about doing is increasing the hours of the day that I have to concentrate on well-being.
Great.
Because I've played around the edges with it, and I walk a lot, and I promise myself that I will do mindfulness, and I don't. And so that really, after speaking with you, has been the big take home, because like you, I want to be happier more times than I'm not, and slowing down and freeing up time and not allowing other things to crib into it will allow me to do that. And you're going to hold me to account. So in 4 weeks' time and 8 weeks' time, you're going to ask me how that's going, and I will have to report back.
I will do. I will look forward to that conversation.
It's been such a privilege and a pleasure speaking with you. And when this gets posted, I will have the link to the Good Registry on it so that people can have a look at that and experience it in their own way and carry on the great work. And thank you very much for being my guest on It's Time.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure and my privilege.
Excellent. I'll see you later.
Bye.